Signed. Committee Room 21. 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 Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Okay, we do have quorum, Clerk. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're going to open in public session. Just going to advise those in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode, and that all devices are to be muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. Members, are there any new interests to declare, not declared at our first meeting, that are relevant to any matters under discussion today? No? Okay. Agenda item 1, apologies. Clerk, are there any apologies at this stage?
Chair, no, just that an info will be a bit late.
Okay. Anybody online today?
No.
No, okay. A couple of members will be arriving shortly. Okay, chairperson's business. Item number 1, members, you probably aware, you may be aware, and if not, I'm going to make you aware that I made a member's statement in plenary on Tuesday morning regarding the department's net zero survey, which seemed to be open to anyone rather than the farming focus that had been envisaged. I tried to get in touch with officials after being contacted by some farmers, but I didn't get a response at that time in the morning. I thought the best way to resolve it and expedite the issue was to make this statement, and the survey was then taken down by lunchtime. So I'm hoping that the department will respond to that because it did create a bit of a wave of unnecessary anxiety, and there were certainly things in it that bounced out to me that probably weren't a really good step to get off with regard to the farming community in regards to trying to get to net zero. If any other members, any comments they want to make on it or anything, are you happy enough that I'm dealing with it from my perspective as having raised the issue on Tuesday? Is that okay? Okay, thank you, members. Chairperson's business. Item number 2, referring to page 6 of the pack, the correspondence from the Chair of the Committee for the Economy regarding the joint concurrent evidence session we attended in the Senate chamber yesterday, which was to consider the response of fibrous networks to Storm Eowyn. Thank you to those who attended in person or by Zoom. Those of us who attended, do you wish to make any comment on that meeting? It was agreed that a follow-up concurrent meeting will be held to hear from officials from the Department of Economy and from DARE on Project Stratum. The clerks will keep us advised in due course. Are there any specific queries or questions that weren't captured in that concurrent meeting? No. it was pretty well covered, and thank you for your input into that. Certainly the rural communities more than had a voice from the members of this committee. I want to thank you for that. Okay, item number 3 is a refer to pages 7 to 106 of the pack for the Programme for Government 24-27 report. Members, as you're aware, the programme was approved by Assembly on the 3rd of March. Are there any comments to make? Are you content to note? Content to note, thank you, members. Item number 4, refer you to pages 4 to 15 of the table of papers for the oral statement from the Minister of Finance made in the Chamber on Tuesday, announcing £120 million of transformation programme funding for innovative projects will support and drive the transformation of our public services. Are there any comments that anybody wants to make? Are you content to note? Content to note. Okay, thank you, members. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of our meeting on the 27th of February. Refer you to pages 107 to 122 of the pack for the draft minutes dated the 27th of February. If any members any comments to make, please let me know. And if you're content with the contents as drafted, I'll sign them. Are we content? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Agenda item 4, matters arising. Number 1, I refer you to response from the Department dated 27th of February, pages 124 to 125 of the pack regarding an update on the new Farm Sustainability Standards FFS and penalty scheme. Members, following the oral briefing on the 13th of February, requested further information regarding the date for completion of the Nutrients Action Plan, that's the NAP review. The Department's response states that following consultation and finalisation of the updated NAP, it is estimated that the updated NAP regulations will be introduced in the second half of 2025. We also queried how the NAP review will impact on the development of subsequent revision of the FSS. In response, the Department states that any new measures brought in via the NAP will be incorporated into FSS for the year of implementation of the NAP measures. The FSS document will be updated to reflect any NAP changes as they apply. Are there any comments that anybody wants to make in that regard? Are you content to note the response? Okay, content to note. Item number 2, refer you to response from the Department dated 4th of March at pages 17 to 18 of the table of papers regarding the conservation, natural habitats, etc., amendment regulations, Northern Ireland 2025. We received an oral briefing on SL1 at our meeting on the 20th of February and agreed that the Department proceeds to make the SR. However, we sought clarity on the dates that DERA realised that Regulation 8A, 6B did not reflect the devolution arrangements for marine conservation, and also on the meetings with DEFRA to agree the way forward. Members, the Department states the issue was first raised by DEFRA on the 9th of June 2023, and DERA officials then met with DEFRA on the 6th of November 2023 and agreed the regulations needed to be amended. At that time, it was not clear what powers were available to make the amendments because the European Communities Act 1972 had been revoked. DERA later found that Section 14 of the retained EU law, Revocation and Reform Act 2023, could be used, and on 5th of November 2024 provided DEFRA with a list of the necessary amendments. On 20th of December, DEFRA confirmed they were content with the proposed amendments, that Section 14 could be used for this purpose, and for DERA to commence the process of making the amending regulations. So that's the response, guys. Are you any comments to make, or are you content to note? Content? Note? Okay. Agenda item 3, refer you to the response from the Department dated the 4th of March, pages 21 to 23 of the table of papers regarding NICS sick absence levels. Members, we requested details of what action DERA plans to take to respond to sick absence levels amongst the staff. The Department states it recognises the need for a supportive approach towards managing sick absence and takes its lead from the Department of Finance, who are responsible for the NICS sick absence policy. The NICS People Plan 24-25 details the commitments to support the health and wellbeing of staff and assist line managers to manage sickness absence, and the NICS Health and Wellbeing Strategy and Action Plan was launched in January 2025. Members, the response outlines additional actions, including establishment of the NICS Mental Health Forum, mandatory sickness absence training for all new line managers, management information dashboards to identify any emerging trends, and strengthening service providers by the NICS Occupational Health Services. Have members anything that they want to note or comment to? I have just one comment to make on it. I'm just aware that a lot of times statutory agencies will look at what they do to manage sickness as opposed to what they do to prevent sickness. And I think it's an omission from this. And if you're minded, I'd just like to make the comment in any response that we make. And I know this goes more to the Department of Finance because they have the policy and do the regulation that. It might be just to maybe ask a question, do they do anything in that preventative, proactive space to reduce sickness as opposed to just managing sickness?
Happy enough, yeah.
Happy enough, members? Thank you. Thank you, Clerk. Agenda item,
Sorry, Chair, do you want a letter to the...
just a short, yes, just the
Finance, Department of Finance and copied to
if that's
Dara?
it, yeah, please, yeah. Thank you very much. It's clear as coffee when I say it, isn't it? Okay, agenda item 4, refer you to correspondence from the department dated 4th of March at pages 26 to 29 of the table papers regarding the Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority, GLAA, proposed licence fee increase. Members, the department is advising of the proposal from the GLAA to increase their licensing fees by 55% from the 20th of April 2025. The GLAA fees have not been reviewed since 2009 and are not currently covering the cost of its licensing services. This is a statutory requirement for GLAA to consult with DAERA before making any rules and fees, and its response is requested from Minister Muir by the 10th of March. Members, I don't see any explanation in the letter for the fees not having been reviewed since 2009, but it does state that under managing public money, the GLAA should have been reviewing their fees on an annual basis. Have any members any other comments they want to make in regard to that? Are you content to note? Okay. The Minister will be getting that, I will respond to that maybe by the 10th of March. Okay. Agenda item 5. Sorry.
We'll move on to number 5. Can I come back on something that I just...
Of course, yeah.
Last week I had asked for that we write to the department around the extra powers which to reallocate funds, which is in the Farm Sustainability Bill. It's not in the draft minutes. So if that's something we can pick up on.
Yeah, no problem.
For
absolutely
next week. Okay. Sorry
No
about that.
problem, yeah, we can...
I should have come in whenever draft minutes were up, but just been reversing back here.
No, Chair, we can get the minutes amended, apologies.
More.
Thank you. Okay, members. Agenda item 5 is the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs evidence session on the Avian Influenza outbreak. We wrote to the Minister on the 17th of February requesting an urgent oral update regarding their response to the outbreak. Members, I refer you to pages 129 to 135 of your pack, to the briefing from DAERA dated the 21st of February, and to pages 136 to 140 of the pack, to the ministerial written statement dated 24th of February that we considered at our meeting last week in advance of today's oral briefing. So I welcome the following departmental officials to the meeting: Ignatius McKeown, Divisional Veterinary Office, Sandrine Gunst, Senior Principal Veterinary Officer, and Jim Blee, the Deputy Director of Animal Disease Control. So I just want to welcome you to the committee. I'm just going to ask you to give us your best brief, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning to you and the members of the committee. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to update you today on the current avian influenza outbreak. As you've mentioned, Chair, I'm joined today by Senior Principal Veterinary Officer Sandrine Gunst and Divisional Veterinary Officer Ignatius McKeown, who along with myself will answer any questions committee members may have after the presentation. In terms of avian influenza preparedness in Northern Ireland, the Department has well established robust disease control contingency plans in place to manage the risk of disease incursions and protect local industry. The avian influenza response plan outlines clear procedures for responding to suspected cases, including rapid diagnostic testing, disease eradication measures, protocols to restrict movements, and the establishment of disease control zones to mitigate for onward spread of the disease. Members will be aware that an avian influenza prevention zone was put in place across Northern Ireland on the 18th of January this year. This decision was taken following a disease risk assessment carried out by DAERA veterinary officials, including results from wild bird investigations. The measures in the AIPZ include stringent, mandatory biosecurity measures to help prevent the spread of disease from wild birds. Biosecurity continues, though, to be the most effective tool to prevent an avian influenza disease incursion. In an effort to mitigate further against any incursion of high-path AI into the commercial poultry sector, Minister Muir took the decision on the 12th of February this year to introduce a mandatory housing order with effect from midnight on Monday the 17th of February. This gave commercial keepers and backyard flock keepers time to prepare and was in consultation with industry. This further disease prevention measure legally requires all bird keepers, including owners of pet birds, commercial flocks, backyard and hobby flocks, to keep their birds housed or otherwise kept separate from wild birds. A ban on poultry gatherings was also introduced at the same time as the housing orders. A housing order was also implemented at the same time in the Republic of Ireland, following Minister Muir's discussions with his counterpart, Minister Martin Hayden, in Daphne. To date, there have been 41 cases of high-path AI in both commercial and captive birds in Great Britain during this season, An AIPZ is in force across Great Britain, and a mandatory housing order similar to Northern Ireland is in place across the most heavily affected places of England. There have been 6 detections of the virus in wild birds in the Republic of Ireland in recent weeks, ranging from Donegal to Wexford. Furthermore, colleagues in Dapham have recently investigated 2 suspect cases, one in Monaghan and one in County Donegal, in kept birds, with tests coming back as negative for both these cases, thankfully. Across Northern Ireland, as of today, there have been 4 confirmed cases of high-path AI H5N1 on premises in Northern Ireland. One at a captive bird site in Macrofelt, where a 3K captive bird monitoring zone was implemented. That was lifted on Tuesday at 4:30 following successful completion of all activities at that site. There are 3 at commercial sites in County Tyrone of PZs and SZs of 3K and 10K. Depopulation and preliminary cleansing disinfection has been completed at all sites. Disease control zones were established around each infected premises, as mentioned, and significant work is ongoing to ensure the requirements within the disease control zones are progressed effectively and efficiently in line with the established protocols. Full details of the scope and measures required within these zones and maps are available on the DAERA website and include the requirement that all moves of poultry products, including litter, eggs or meat within, into and out of the zones are required to be licensed. A movement licensing centre has been established to facilitate this, including the deployment of a licensing app to further streamline this process for industry. The Movement Licensing Centre has issued over 400 licences for the movement of live birds, eggs and poultry litter, and before licences are issued, clinical visits by veterinary staff are required 24 hours before the movements of live poultry. The licensing of table eggs requires verification of production records, and this process is demanding on resources but essential to our disease control measures and safeguard industry operations. From a public health and food safety perspective, the PHA has advised that avian influenza is primarily a disease of birds and the risk to the general public's health is very low. The Food Standards Agency has made it clear that avian influenza poses a very low food safety risk for UK consumers and that properly cooked poultry and poultry products, including eggs, are safe to eat. However, there is a concern that this virus, like any virus, could mutate into a strain which is transmissible from human to human. This has been monitored very closely by public health colleagues across these islands and, of course, globally. In respect of trade, the confirmation of notifiable disease in Northern Ireland can have a significant effect on exports. As international trade is a reserve matter, DAERA is working closely on a daily basis with DEFRA market access colleagues to ensure trade with third countries is maintained where possible. Trade colleagues are supporting industry on a continuous basis to understand the restrictions and timing related to these being lifted. There has been extensive field activity by DAERA staff undertaking disease control activities, with staff working out of normal hours at evening and weekends to ensure disease control measures are taken as quickly as possible. This work has included taking control of infected sites following disclosure of disease, carrying out the culling and disposal of birds on site, preliminary cleansing and disinfection of the infected premises, carrying out of veterinary clinical visits in the zones, sampling of further report cases, tracing high-risk flocks, and undertaking further surveillance visits and telephone calls to all flocks within the disease control zones. Eradication teams have worked under difficult conditions on the infected premises to ensure the humane culling of infected birds and disposal of carcasses safely and as quickly as possible. The teams of staff on these sites can range from 15 to 20 members of staff depending on the method of depopulation. The resource available for field activities has been impacted by both the stand-down period requirements between site visits and the need to retain a cohort of available clean veterinarians and animal health and welfare inspectors to attend report case premises and to carry out the surveillance and licensing activities. DAERA officials continue to engage with affected flock keepers to discuss next steps with their premises, including dealing with poultry litter and manure and developing protocols for final cleansing and disinfection and detailing the requirements and timelines for restocking. Restocking can commence 21 days after final cleansing and disinfection, or 3 months after preliminary cleansing and disinfection, subject to a veterinary risk assessment and sign off by the department. Surveillance activity is required within the disease control zones to ensure that there's been no onward spread of the disease from affected premises. At this juncture, veterinary officials have conducted over 120 in-person clinical visits and made almost 800 telephone surveillance calls. We have been working closely with our colleagues across Great Britain and in the Republic of Ireland as this outbreak develops, and this has included frequent stock take calls across the UK and close collaboration with colleagues in the devolved administrations on the approach to this outbreak. We have also had regular engagement with colleagues in DAFM to update them on the current position and discuss cross-cutting issues. In cases where a notifiable strain of AI is confirmed, the Department is required to depopulate and dispose of affected poultry to prevent further disease spread. Compensation for birds culled at the direction of the Department is payable in these circumstances, and work has begun to calculate the monies due to flock keepers in close collaboration with them. A detailed breakdown of costs associated with this current ongoing outbreak is not available at this stage. However, costs will include the procurement of external depopulation providers, hiring of equipment, culling, disposal, and preliminary cleansing and disinfection, as well as staff costs, including overtime. Since the first confirmed case in this current outbreak, we have undertaken frequent engagement and communications with local industry and other stakeholders to heighten awareness and deliver key messages on how to protect the Northern Ireland poultry flock from an incursion. We have highlighted the biosecurity self-assessment tool, which is available on the DAERA website, along with guidance to assist all bird keepers to review, enhance and maintain robust security measures to protect their birds. The Minister met with industry stakeholders on the 25th of February, and the Department continues to engage with stakeholders from across the agri-food sector to update them regularly on this evolving situation. And we will continue to reinforce the importance of biosecurity measures and vigilance. There have also been extensive media interviews, press releases and a social media campaign communicating the introduction of the IEPZ and housing order and further emphasising the importance of good biosecurity. The Avian Influenza text message service has also been used regularly to update on the new measures to mitigate against the risk of an incursion here and promoting good biosecurity. So the risk of a high path A incursion to domestic poultry in Northern Ireland is currently assessed as moderate. With biosecurity, and you'll have heard that word a few times today, Chair, biosecurity continuing to play a key role in the potential to reduce the risk posed to each individual flock. The veterinary risk assessment highlighted that it was imperative the poultry industry and all keepers of birds should review and critically reinforce their biosecurity arrangements, including the physical separation of wild birds, particularly waterfowl and gulls, from poultry and captive birds, as this remains the most effective protection against an incursion of AI. And as outlined above, we will continue to work closely with all stakeholders to communicate this important message. All measures introduced will continue to be in place until the risk of a further avian influenza incursion reduces, and veterinary officials will continue to keep these measures under regular review in close collaboration with industry stakeholders. Thank you for your time, and we are happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you very much. It was a very detailed brief and was really enjoyed it. I've got three questions. The first one's pretty short. How effective do you think the instruction to house all birds has been, and how do you measure the efficacy of that at the moment?
So, first of all, in the communication of the message, we communicated very broadly. Minister made a statement in the House, and we also had press releases, updates to the DAERA website. We communicated through text message to all registered keepers. That little bit of time was given so people could prepare and ensure that they could meet their legal requirement. In respect of efficacy, I mean, I suppose we are subject to either our inspectors witnessing things and taking action, or public reports in respect of non-housing. And we have had a small number of reports, and our enforcement approach in this would be, to visit those people and maybe communicate with them what the requirements are, give them some guidance, and then revisit those. We haven't got to a stage yet where we have got to a position where we are aware of any flock that's not housed and that has not followed our guidance. But if that was the case, then we would move to enforcement in respect to that.
And it's my own assessment in thinking about this over this last couple of weeks that the housing arrangements apply to every type of bird, including pigeons, racing pigeons, every sort of anything that anybody would keep and give that would have flight. So if a member of the public wanted to raise a matter of non-compliance, then they contact the department have a team that will respond to that directly. Okay, there's a bit in there in the paper. It's about contingency plans and how department would prepare for instances like this. Could you talk me a wee bit through how often the contingency plans would be assessed? Is it done in a tabletop manner, and how that's reviewed?
Okay, so I'll start and hand over to Sandrine. So we have different levels of a contingency plan within veterinary service as well too. We would have our generic contingency plan, and then we would have individual disease contingency plans, and that's the same for avian influenza. In respect of exercises, those are carried out regularly, but can we talk a bit about the exercises and then?
Yeah, they're carried out, for example, in June we had an exercise on African swine fever in cooperation with the South as well, with DAFM. We have internal exercises, we have the structure, we have a central structure and a local structure, so they are exercised regularly or annually as well. Their instructions are reviewed. We make sure all the posts are filled with the correct people, with the correct training. Again, that's reviewed at least twice a year, make sure everything is in place and ready to go. We have training organised, so we had big exercise on blue tongue training this year as well. We have online training that we can roll out quickly and efficiently in view of an outbreak, for example at the threat of foot and mouth, which is not even influenza related, but it's just an example. When that came in, we were able to quickly roll out online training just to remind all staff again of all the signs, the procedures and everything else. So it is there's a full team dedicated to this, and it is a continuous exercise.
We also benefit, Chair, we also benefit as well too, obviously, from our relationships with our UK colleagues, which are very close and very well established and very mature and been ongoing for many years, including from before my tenure and during Ignatius' tenure, maybe before Ignatius' tenure as well. But we do benefit from that. We benefit from that critical mass across the UK and being involved in national exercises as well at a significant level.
How's it managed? Jim, is that like a service level agreement or a memorandum of understanding, or is it just in the operational space that it's
From an animal health perspective, obviously animal health has devolved to the Four Nations, but it's clearly recognised that animal health across the UK is interdependent and interconnected, as it is on the island of Ireland, given that it's a single epidemiological unit. An animal disease policy group is probably the key forum for that, and that's the four UK CBOs and policy leads and operational leads where appropriate. It used to meet quarterly. Since the EU exit, we now meet weekly, and that's the forum for that organisation and that coordination in bringing the Four Nations together in respect of animal health.
Okay, my final question then is around how does the department support farmers in terms of animal welfare then, because some of the flocks obviously will be perhaps free-range flocks who predominantly will be used to and enjoy that outside experience, but obviously maybe the business isn't set up specifically for housed birds, and then is there anything in there to help and advise and assist bird keepers in that in regard to maintain high levels of animal welfare whilst their inspections are ongoing?
And hand over to Ignatius maybe as well, but we do have a comprehensive guidance on the DAERA website in respect of housing birds and measures that we take. And that's why it maybe takes a little bit of time to ensure that from your largest commercial flock to your backyard keeper who has a half a dozen chickens, to ensure that both they can meet their legal requirement and how to go about that in those extreme scenarios, but also how they ensure that they maintain animal welfare. But I know, Ignatius, you might touch on some of that. Right? Yeah,
well, I suppose really normally poultry basically can be housed, without a lot of poultry or welfare concerns. But whenever you move to other species such as ducks and geese, well then, generally speaking, there can be welfare issues in relation to them. As Jim says, there is some information available on the DAERA website in relation to welfare, and I suppose really at the end of the day, they can consult their own PVP as well, their private veterinary practitioner. We talk about housing, but there is also the facility to keep your birds separate from wild birds, and that can include netting as well. So they don't all have to be housed as such. There is a facility there if this is going to cause major welfare problems, that they can keep them in an outside pen, provided it is fenced off and netted so that there's no access to wild birds.
Yeah, I'm going to move on very quickly. The difficulty with that one, I think the Minister had used an example of say wild bird litter coming in through a vent into a housed unit. So it's, yeah, okay, I appreciate that, Ignatius, thank you. Okay, Declan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation as well. And obviously, none of us underestimate the serious impact this has for the farmers who do their best in terms of biosecurity. But an example Robbie gave there, you know, in a number of the cases there that actually was house birds that were impacted. Just so the farmer had taken the appropriate biosecurity measures. So tell me, in terms of, obviously, you know, the department funds the cost of culling and the disinfectant and the assessments and surveillance. Is there an appropriate budget set aside for this here?
So, as I mentioned, Declan just or Deputy Chair, sorry, at the start, the detailed costs are not known at this stage, at this juncture. We are working closely with our finance division to ensure that all the emerging costs can be covered within the department's overall resource DEL budget, which has been already been finalised for 24-25, and then any future costs for 25-26 will be considered as part of the June monitoring round. I think the answer to your question is that for episodic disease outbreaks, there is no budget line, but the department's managing within their resource DEL finalised budget for 24-25 at this juncture.
Yeah. So the appropriate or prudent for the department because it's so probably unpredictable to prepare for that there, you know, for that sort of an eventuality if we had an outbreak again.
Yeah, well, and there was my understanding is from finance colleagues is that, you know, at the previous budget bids there was a bid put in for 1 million for these purposes, but that bid wasn't met at that juncture, and will probably continue to be bid for on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. And seeing the issue of the litter, how do you deal with the litter of from the houses which have been impacted by the influenza?
So on affected premises?
Yeah.
Ignatius, do you want to pick that up?
In relation to litter, basically, there's two ways the farmer can deal with it. The first thing is he can leave it, you know, in the house for a period of a minimum of 42 or 60 days, depending on the type of manure that it is. The other way that he can deal with the litter is that he can move it off under DAERA supervision to another premises. And again, as I say, certainly some of the farmers are looking at that particular option.
And we've been working closely, Deputy Chair, with all the affected farmers in respect of what measures are required, what the process is going forward, and the timelines around restocking. We have single points of contact for each affected premises, so that they have a clear channel of communication with the department to raise any issues and clarify any understanding.
Yeah, just on that, just to add, you know, we have met with the individual farmers, with a meeting with all the interested persons within the department, talking to the individual farmer, and again we've gone through the process with them, explained the options available for the disposal of litter and the cleansing and the disinfection process, and if they have any questions, obviously then they can come back to us and raise any issues that they might have.
And a lot of these premises affected would be in border areas as well, and there is arrangements with farmers north and south in terms of transposing or the litter as well. So have you been engaging closely with DAFM around all of those issues as well?
So in general, terms in respect of epidemic diseases, I mean, as we've said, the island is a single epidemiological unit. We meet very regularly with our colleagues in DAFM. I mean, in peacetime, we would meet fortnightly, regularly, and sometimes more regularly, and then in the heat of a battle, I would call it now, you know, we're meeting more frequently. We met with our colleagues just in Neagh on Tuesday there on a number of issues where high path AI was discussed. Unfortunately, we have experience in the past of outbreaks in both jurisdictions, which meant the disease control zones had to cross into the other jurisdiction, and we've had to work closely to implement those. And then in respect of how integrated our agri-food, particularly poultry industry, is both in movement of live birds and movement of animal byproducts. We've worked closely to ensure from a disease control perspective, but also from a trade perspective, that both jurisdictions are content with arrangements and agree arrangements in respect to those matters.
So just finally, Chair, I think you kind of answered me the question that I asked. Is so would each jurisdiction implement each other's control zone?
There is a legal requirement that if a control zone would extend into another jurisdiction, that the corresponding jurisdiction must implement that control zone and the measures within it. Sorry.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, that was a good question. Patsy.
Thanks very much indeed, and thank you for your presentation, also for the department's work and dealing with a very difficult situation. What I wanted to ask was the applicable time for where the compensatory amount kicks in. Could you advise me on that, because that seems to have been raised as an issue? Can you tell me when, in other words, say there's a flock of, we'll say 10,000 birds that was there recently, are all 10,000 of those birds compensated for?
So,
yes, you know.
there, Patsy, is that right?
Yes, that's grand.
Yeah. So, in respect of the compensation that is payable under the Disease of Animals Order in 1981, that compensation is payable for live birds that are culled under our direction, and that direction is for disease control purposes. Yes. That is to mitigate for onward spread. Now, we appreciate obviously that time is a factor here, particularly given the nature of this disease, which is devastating in most circumstances. So our baseline, our starting point is that we will cull based on, or we will compensate based on the live birds we will cull, and we'll make an assessment in conjunction with the farmer in respect of that. Now, of course, there may be logistical challenges in respect of ensuring that we can get our staff on the ground, depending on the time, whether it's the weekend or public holidays or things like that. But also, if we were procuring external depopulation providers, there may be some time there as well. So, we will take that all into account in discussion with the farmer in respect of that. In general terms, in GB, they allow about 48 hours from time of confirmation to the time of starting culling as an acceptable.
Yes.
We don't have that sort of policy laid down yet, but it's one of the lessons learned that we're taking from this, is to review our position in respect of that. So, to answer your question, that was a long way around, but the shorter answer is we compensate for live birds that are culled in our direction, but we recognise that there are circumstances where that may need to be assessed in conjunction with the farmer, and we're happy to have those conversations.
So that's my point. There will be, and there have been, as you know, instances where birds that were infected haven't been compensated for because of that, if you like, that time lapse or that time gap. So you said you're going to have conversations about it. I'm sort of taken to the next step. What's going to be done about it?
So we do have one conversation ongoing.
Yes.
In respect to this, and the effective flock keeper has made a case in respect of the time that was taken from confirmation to culling started and the number of birds, and that is going through the decision making process within the department to agree or negotiate with that farmer in respect of a payment that could be made in respect of that.
So let's take it to the decision making process. I presume you or some of you have an input to that.
We would have an input from my perspective, from the legal perspective, and
yes.
I'm not going to rehearse that line again, but from a logistical perspective then Sandrine's operational team would have what's reasonable and what were the barriers, or what was the time delays, and is that was that within our control, was that out with our control? So I don't know why you want to touch on that. Sorry.
As you will know, just to expand a wee bit further on it, people are going to be getting it tight enough because they'll not have an income for 6 months from that specific from the birds. So anything difficult, if you like, at the far end, and none of them ever wanted to have this infected and plague upon themselves, upon their flock. So they're losing out income in general, but if they're losing out compensatory amounts for birds that have been infected with AI, then you want to make sure, I would want to make sure that they're properly looked after. Circumstances beyond their control, circumstances maybe even beyond their control in terms of getting to the actual premises to deal with to cull the birds. So can you maybe give us some indication as to when that will be rectified, because you want to make sure that in future we're not arriving at a similar type situation where people are disadvantaged basically at both ends, and then, if you like, disadvantaged for a further 6 months on top of it.
So I could pick up the 6 months part first, and then I'll come back to the second part. So, depending on the options taken by the flockkeeper, and there's no definitive timeline in this, Patsy, but you know, they could be back. They could be restocked within 40 days. You know, and that's pretty average. You know, given the requirements for C&D and the time delays. Then, so about 40 days would be fair enough estimate. It could be slightly shorter, and it could be longer. So they could be back in 40 days. I suppose in respect of the compensation and the time when that assessment is made, you know, I think we have to work from a disease control perspective and a veterinary service perspective. We have to work within the legal vires, which is that we compensate for live birds. Again, as I say, we do recognise that goes no way to compensating a farmer for the impact that this has on them and their farm family, and we would need to take that forward with the rest, with the other part of the department, and in relation to any sort of further support that might be available, out with what the disease control legislation states.
Get that, Jim, but I'm sort of trying to get to the point that, if you forgive me, Chair, just for on this, because I want to tie this one down. If you have those types of circumstances where, due to, we'll call it, there may be delays on people getting out to cull the flock, or other exceptional circumstances as well, that birds aren't been compensated before to the farmer, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Clearly there's a case before yourselves at the moment where that has become an issue and is a live issue. I want to make sure just that is, if you like, closed off, tied off, and that in future circumstances where that does arise again, that particular, if you like, confluence of different issues arrive, that maybe things aren't done as fast as what they might have been somewhere else, that a person isn't disadvantaged further as a result of that. So what I'm trying to get at here is, as you know, when will you have some clarity around that issue?
So we do have a process in place, and that process is ongoing in respect to that affected farmer, and that is going through the decision-making processes now, as it is, and there'll be further discussions then with Finance Division in respect of the type of payment that could be made, and the justification around that. So that process is there, it exists.
I'm just not here to champion one cause. I want to make sure that in future, if similar type circumstances do arise, that there will be, if you like, a methodology put in place, or a methodology ready to go live that deals with and addresses that situation.
I think that is part of what I've said about, you know, taking this as a lesson learned, right, looking at what other jurisdictions do, and having a clear understanding, and in close engagement with industry, which we work with very closely, about what a reasonable time frame is, and then what the steps are if that time frame is missed.
And Chair, just to wrap that all up, if we could have an update as to what mechanism the department will put in place to deal with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Said pretty forensic. You'll remember that one. Yeah. Thank you. Well done. Okay, William, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You did say, I think, that there's 4 outbreaks in Northern Ireland. Now, those 4 outbreaks in the same general area are more widespread.
So are they in the same general area? So they are in the same general area. It's Macrafell, Cookstown, Pomeroy, Stewartstown are the sort of 4 broad areas.
Okay.
But very, very close together, William.
From the last outbreak, an individual farm in Northern Ireland, how long is it to use can lift restrictions from the last outbreak? What's the time frame for saying we're safe to open and lift restrictions again? So
there's several levels in that, William. So we'll start at the disease control zone level. So a PZ, the protection zone, which is 3 kilometres around an affected premises, can be lifted within 21 days of effective preliminary C&D. And then the surveillance zones that are around that is a further 9 days. So that's lifting your disease control zones. Now that's allowing that, you know, that we carry out all the surveillance activity within those zones. As I mentioned in the opening remarks, that includes clinical visits, which is veterinary service staff having to be on the ground and a clinical visit of the birds and inspection of the production records, and then also surveillance visits. So 30 days is the minimum period that those zones have to be in place. But again, you know, we always caveat that depending on resource and depending on the number of premises. You'll be aware this is a very poultry dense area, and there's a significant number of premises within these zones that we have to carry it out. But I don't think, Ignatius, we missed the 30 days that are in our outbreaks in 2021, 22. We haven't missed our 30 days, so that's our target, and we will try and maintain that. But we'll keep the committee updated in respect to that. Following on from that, we still have the avian influenza prevention zone in place, and I suppose that's important to remember as well too. You know, that's in place across Northern Ireland. Within that has the housing order and the ban on poultry garlings. That will remain in place until, you know, we are confident from a veterinary risk assessment perspective that the likelihood of an incursion has reduced, and that measure will only be lifted in conjunction with industry and in conjunction with our colleagues across the UK and Ireland in respect. And probably, to be honest, stepping into these controls, we like to step out of them because it gives you some other opportunities of messaging. So the housing will come off first. Well, maybe the poultry galleries will come off first, and then the housing come off after that, and then the AIPZ in general coming off after that. And then I don't know whether you want to touch on trade, but there's a third level then, is that restrictions that are put on for trade can last longer than some of these, because obviously third country trade partners can put their own measures in place and their own requirements. One key area for unlocking that is WOA zonal freedom. We trade as part of the UK. After the first outbreak was the first time that Northern Ireland was recognised, and as a credit to our industry and credit to colleagues in veterinary service as well too, that we were recognised as a zone of the UK free from AI. GB unfortunately has not had their freedom back since. They had it back for maybe 2 weeks, unfortunately, but we have maintained ours until this juncture since 2022. So that WOA zonal freedom is another step that we can take then to ease measures.
Does trade affect boilers or eggs the most? Is there any difference in the effect of trade?
It can affect both. Broiler, the export of broiler meat to third countries, and also the effect of some commercial eggs are also exported to third countries.
There's a scarcity of eggs seemingly, so I wouldn't have thought there's many eggs being exported to third countries.
Well, as I said, certainly in the past we've exported eggs to third countries.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, have you?
No,
Was that
I'm fine.
asked?
Thank you. Patsy has asked my question. Thank you.
Chair.
Maybe there's somebody else.
I've got. Do you want to come in on this one, or is it
following
on
on
that?
from what William had
Okay.
said? Was whenever house of birds is humanely destroyed, what is the time frame to replacing that the birds back in that house again, a new flock?
Okay, so there's a number of routes to restocking from the flock keeper that are provided in legislation, and you know, legislation has a purpose, but I mean it's based on science, it's based on risk, and it's based on the survivability of the virus and certain conditions. So the preliminary C&D is the most, is the first stage, and really the role of preliminary C&D is to sort of mitigate for any onward spread of the disease. The next step then is a secondary C&D, and depending on what approach that the flock keeper would take, and we would work very closely, and we have very experienced staff in respect to this, working with the flock keeper to explain the options and explain the timelines. But the minimum time frame for the completion of secondary C&Ds is 14 days. But Tom, in realistic terms, it's probably 15, 16, 17 days. Ensuring things in legislation, it's 14 days. After that's been completed, that secondary or final C&D, once that's completed, 21 days after that, the birds can be restocked. Now, if the flock keeper doesn't undertake that secondary C&D for whatever reason, then there is provision in the legislation that based on a veterinary risk assessment, we could permit restocking after 3 months after the completion of preliminary C&D. So there's a couple of routes to restocking. It depends on our engagement with the flock keeper and the choices are made therein with that.
Thank you. John Blair.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to all of you for the information we received, but I'm keen to hold in a bit more of a man on the biosecurity issue. How satisfied are you with the uptake on that across the sector in general? And also, how are you fixed for resources to check that proper biosecurity measures are being maintained for the duration required?
So I suppose in the first instance, John, I have to say, you know, and the department recognises and ministers recognise this as well too. The poultry industry in general in Northern Ireland are excellent. You know, they are second to none in respect of the approaches that are taken in respect of biosecurity, and a credit that, you know, given the infection pressure that's being experienced across these islands and across Europe in recent years, they've kept this virus out for you know 3 years now. You know, and our colleagues in the UK have had significant challenges in that. So our baseline starting point's really good. Our AIPZ that was put in place is those good measures that should be being carried out at all premises, but just putting that into law and giving us that, you know, that lever if needed. I have to say, you know, Sandrine, from a field perspective, you know, we're not aware of any significant issues. We were aware during the last outbreak of a significant issue of birds not being housed, and we managed and dealt with that through our enforcement process, which of course is, you know, your advice, your engagement, your education, your little bit of encouragement, and then finally we didn't go to enforcement at that stage and the person complied. So from a resource perspective, it would be our field staff in the field DVOs who would be tasked to go out and inspect and provide advice in the very first instance. And I don't think we would have any concerns about that at this juncture. And the level of reports, to be honest, John, are little or none. We are very happy to hear if there's concerns out there from elected members or their constituents. We're very happy to hear those concerns and act on them.
Thank you.
And definitely at the commercial level, they are very good, and we do have that contact and engagement and discussing biosecurity measures that make sure that we're both happy if our inspectors come on site, as well as their own procedures, that everything is aligned and robust as well. Okay.
We're actually meeting industry in an hour's time as well to discuss biosecurity and litter movements within the zones at 12 o'clock today.
Thank you.
Members, final one. Don't mind. You just got to the bit that, and you said to John, you know, if you get a case or an indication or someone makes a report, you go out and educate and convince, convert, whatever that is. Yeah. But it sounds like the PSNI lines.
Well, I favour the PSNI lines, Chair.
What does enforcement look like? What powers do you have if it's not acted upon? What can and could you do?
So the AIPZ is under the Northern Ireland Avian Influenza Regs 2007 at Article 6. It's a legal requirement and it's enforceable then under the DOA and a fine up to £5,000. Sorry. We don't want to get there, Chair.
I get that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Members are content. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Okay, members. Agenda item 6 is the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs evidence session. The Lough Action Plan Programme Management Update. Refer members to pages 142 to 145 of the pack for the paper for this item. The purpose of the briefing is to provide an update on the implementation of the Lough Action Plan. So shortly we will be welcoming the departmental officials to brief the committee and answer any questions after the briefing. Those that we will be giving the presentation are Adele Willis, Lough Delivery Governance Natural Environment Policy Division, Catriona Davis, Water Management Unit NIEA, and Patrick Murphy, the Chief Scientific Advisor for DAERA, and then we'll take a series of questions. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for your attendance. We're looking forward to the session, and once you're comfortable and ready, you can brief the committee. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity today to provide an update on the implementation of the Lough Action Plan. Before I begin, I'll allow myself to introduce myself. I'm Adele Willis, Assistant Director of Lough Delivery and Governance and Programme Manager of the Lough Action Plan. I'm accompanied today by my colleagues Catriona Davis from Northern Ireland Environment Agency, and she's Head of Water Management Unit, and Patrick Murphy, Chief Scientific Advisor's Office. I'll begin by briefly outlining the background to the Lough Action Plan and set out the progress made to date. As you'll be aware, the Lough Report and Action Plan were developed by a joint DAERA, Department for Infrastructure Water Quality Steering Group, to tackle the ongoing water quality issues, particularly the blue-green algal blooms that have impacted Lough Neagh. The action plan is science-led and aligns with the Environmental Improvement Plan to take a strategic approach to the broader challenges in the catchment area. The Executive, as you'll be aware, approved the plan in July 2024 and it was published shortly after. The plan comprises 37 actions with primary responsibility for implementation of these actions resting with DAERA, supported by the Department for Infrastructure and the Department of Justice. I am responsible for the programme management for the Lough Neagh Action Plan. My role is to oversee and drive the implementation of the 37 science-led actions to improve water quality in Lough Neagh. Moving on to progress to date. Governance structures have been introduced and there's now a Lough Neagh Programme Board and Lough Neagh Stakeholder Forum which are now in place. As an overview of the 37 actions, 10 actions have been delivered, 23 are progressing, 4 remain to be commenced, and there's been significant progress across multiple areas, and I'll now go in and give you a quick breakdown of those areas. Research of innovative solutions under the Small Business Research Initiative. The Lough Neagh Blue-Green Algae Small Business Research Initiative is in phase 1, which is currently underway, and it's to look at new ways of developing new approaches to tackle algae without affecting the environment or minimal impact. The Sustainable Use of Livestock Slurry SBRI programme is in phase 2, and it's aimed at supporting innovative nutrient management on farms. In practice, some farmers are already having their slurry separated and diverting phosphorus-rich solids to be used as a feedstock for anaerobic digestion, thereby reducing excess phosphorus being spread to land. Under regulation and enforcement, work is continuing to recruit enforcement and regulatory staff focused on the Lough Neagh catchment. Recruitment is well advanced, with 21 of 28 enforcement and regulatory roles filled to strengthen pollution response efforts. These posts include a range of monitoring, assessment, inspection and enforcement roles across a number of teams within the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. DAERA officials have been undertaking increased waterway inspections within several Lough Neagh catchments of concern. To date, over 100 sites have been assessed to identify pressures on water quality, with several instances of pollution discovered and referred for further action. Around stakeholder and community engagement, the first quarterly Lough Neagh Stakeholder Forum was chaired by the Minister in December 24, with the second meeting scheduled for next week. There were 3 public drop-in events in October 2024 to engage local communities on water quality issues around Lough Neagh, and a communications plan and campaign brief is being developed to coordinate future public engagement. On monitoring and surveillance, the interagency Blue-Green Algae Monitoring Protocol, published in May 2024, was implemented during the 2024 bathing season. The protocol was successfully used to deliver public health messaging at impacted bathing waters throughout 2024. And a report of the 2024 results is currently being compiled and should be published within the next few weeks. In relation to the longer term vision for Lough Neagh, a 2-day innovation lab has been organised for the 18th and 19th of March, with the purpose of the iLab to generate solutions and to establish a long-term vision for Lough Neagh over the next 20 to 30 years' time. The DAERA PhD Studentships Programme competition recently closed, and DAERA intends to support at least 3 Lough Neagh-related research projects under this programme. A Lough Neagh science platform is being developed, and it will include a data platform with modelling capacity for Lough Neagh and its catchments to inform future policies. It will also include research into blue-green algal blooms and toxin dynamics, cycle and fates, and then also microbial source tracking to assess antimicrobial resistance. I'll now provide a quick forward look for some of the planned work over the next 6 months or so. So for regulatory improvements, we've established an enforcement liaison group to develop proposals for enhanced enforcement powers and fixed penalty notices, with a public consultation expected in the coming months. In the coming weeks, CAFRE, our College of Farming and what is it? Apologies for that. We'll deliver further farm water quality events, sustainable agricultural programme awareness events promoting actions on water quality and the soil nutrient health scheme. We'll also provide additional training for the soil nutrient health scheme, which, as you know, there's been quite a big uptake to date in that. Work will continue to be progressed on the Lough Neagh Science platform over the next few months to continue building the software and incorporating detailed scientific data from the Lough and its tributaries. A Lough Neagh communications plan and a communication campaign brief is in development, as mentioned previously, with the aim of this being agreed in the coming months. Also, as mentioned previously, the Lough Neagh blue-green algae SBRI Phase 1 is progressing, with suppliers developing their proof of concept. At the conclusion of this Phase 1, an assessment will be made on progressing Phase 2 and commencing it in 2025-26. A public consultation on proposals for the updated Nutrient Action Plan will be launched in spring 2025. In parallel, there will also be a consultation on the associated Strategic Environmental Assessment and Habitats Regulations Assessment. It is envisaged that the updated Nutrient Action Plan will be regulations will be introduced later in 2025. Finally, it is the intention to publish the 3rd cycle River Basin Management Plan in the next few months, subject to executive approval. In conclusion, our Minister remains fully committed to driving forward the Lough Neagh Action Plan. It's important to remember that this success depends on collaboration across government, local authorities, businesses and communities. Planet is obviously one of the executive's 3 missions, and protecting Lough Neagh and the environment is priority number 8 of 9 objectives of the programme for government. The importance placed on addressing the issues in Lough Neagh and continued support will prove crucial in achieving the short, medium and longer term improvements needed to achieve improvement in the long term. As I've set out, good progress has been made, but it is important to stress and recognise that the issues in Lough Neagh are complex and therefore its recovery will take time. Thank you for your time this morning, and we are happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. And this is the first in-depth brief that I've received as chair, because I'm here 6th October. I've been looking forward to it, and I know that it is a priority right across the Chamber, the Assembly, and now the Executive, and have been picked out in the programme for government, so that is good to see. I'm going to start off with what hopefully doesn't come across as in any way like a cheeky question, but it's a lowball question. In this year that we're facing into, is there an anticipated algal bloom expected of the same significance as last year or the year before?
With the nutrient status of the lough, it's very, very difficult to say that it will not happen. The blooms that have happened more recently are due to maybe changes within the lough. However, if you're asking, are there going to be algal blooms, or are there going to be potentially the blue-green algae, toxic algal blooms. I would say that there is likely to be an algal bloom, whether it is toxic or not. We need to wait and see based on factors during the year. But we will continue to monitor that through the basin water protocol and through our NIEA colleagues. And when we get the initial scientific data coming in, both from ourselves and from AFBI, and we're also dealing with NI Water at the moment, we'll certainly be more aware of the exact nature of the bloom and also its potential impact.
I appreciate it. I have a specific reason for asking the question. Is because growing up beside the Lough, and for many years we would have seen at times, either pollution incidents or algal blooms, and we wouldn't have understood it. And I would have a small concern that if we have a year where there isn't a discernible bloom, that it would be seen as a success, and it would tilt the overall overarching priorities, because there's significant money now being tilted towards this. And one of those I'd like to bottom out is, if you look at the resource and the capital allocation here, unusually the capital allocation is 3 times the resource, and I'm just wondering if you could explain, if it's possible for you to explain that to me. So it's just over 12.8 million, I think, that's been allocated to capital, and resources much smaller. Is there anything in that you have? And if you don't, it's something we can receive from the department, what that is built around, that number.
Yeah, it'd probably be better for us to respond to you separately on that in writing.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask then, in terms of an opening question, what will success inevitably look like if you can break it down into the short term, the medium term and the longer term, if it has been fleshed out? Are there any measurables that have been established, apart from obviously not wanting the blue-green toxic algal bloom?
Do you want me to start on it? I suppose to give you an overview maybe of some of the SPRI projects that are going on at the moment, you may well already be aware of the Solids project, which I think you've had updates on previously, which is sustainable utilisation of livestock slurry. The other 2 revolve around in-lake mitigations. So the first one, essentially the slurry one, involves less slurry, less nutrient going on the land. You then have a second one, which is looking at the potential treatment of the blue-green algae itself in the loch. And then you have a third one, which is space linked to SPRI, where they're looking at satellite imagery and potentially remote sensing to actually see what is going on within the catchments. So within the livestock slurry one, they're now into phase 2, and I think you've been updated maybe previously on some of the measures around it. Within the in-loch SPRI, there are 5 projects currently going forward. 4 of them will trial in-loch this year. So whether they are successful or not is based on those trials. They're currently looking at sites to go in. I think the majority of them have sites designated, but they will be working through the environmental assessments just to make sure they're not going to cause any damage in those particular sites. So for us in the short term, within the science end of it, we're looking at initial tests this year to see what is going to benefit in terms of actually responding to blue-green algae. And then from the space SPRI, which is currently occurring at the moment, we will be looking at trying to work out where the algal blooms start and how they move within the loch. So rather than essentially treating the loch as a unit, we could potentially treat specific areas within the loch, which again feeds into your question around capital, resource, etc. We want to be able to do this effectively, but also in a managed way in terms of resources. Then also within the science area, we have we're working with colleagues in AFBI at the moment to commission a number of research projects, which will again look at improving the levels of data that we have to feed into that modelling and to feed into the decision-making processes that we have. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to come in on that as well.
Chair, just from our point of view in the agency, the long-term result will be improvement in water quality, obviously. The recent statistics report published last week indicated that Lough Neagh actually went from bad to poor, so there was a minimal improvement there. But from the point of view of short and medium, it's to see a reduction in the nutrients going into the loch, and therefore tackling it at source. And that's throughout the catchment. So being able to work across the catchment to find the reductions there, which will then have the impact on the overall lock itself. So it will be a long-term process to see the impact of the work that needs to started and needs to continue. And I think that's the thing. It is a long-term picture that we're looking at, but we have to work
in terms
through
of that water quality piece, the measurement of it, the metric for what's in the water, because there will always be things in the water. Is that an international standard, or is it a standard that we have for ourselves? Do we have
these standards would come from the Water Framework Directive, which is transposed into our legislation in Northern Ireland, and that's where the standards and the classification process works through to identify what the status is for water bodies.
Okay. My final question then, and you started to touch on it towards the end, which is the role of local council in regard to, because they're a significant stakeholder and partner in regard to particularly water frontage and use, and probably roll NI water into this as well as a potential pollutant on the statutory side. What do those relationships look like with the board and the panel, and not a league table of high performing councils, but are there any concerns?
As members of the stakeholder forum include council members as well as NI Water also. We have good relationships, good lines of communication at present with that, and we're hoping that will be continued moving forward to address these issues.
Okay, but listen, I'm going to now open up the floor to. Are you foregoing, Declan? Or have you got a question? Or are you? Is it
I just wanted to ask about the sustainable use of the slurry one. I remember we got a briefing on that at one stage in the past about the sustainable use of manure. Or effectively, I think the proposal that stage was for like a mobile machine or whatever to go around farms that would sort of segregate the phosphates from the rest of the slurry. Where's that project at, and has it shown any signs of promise? I'm sure it has at this stage.
There are, as far as I know, there are 2 awards to date, and I think maybe based on finance, they may be looking at a third. One of the awards has been reasonably well publicised, so that the supplier in that case, they're already going around a number of farms. The figures that they're giving are that they are looking at 40 farms and over 1,000 tonnes of separated solids to date. Now that they're separating it into a more solid fraction and a more liquid fraction, and then they can utilise those in different ways, so that there's a significant amount of nutrient being taken off site or off fields.
And just for clarity, then, isn't that would be brought till 8A? Is that right?
Yes, yes, honourable suggestion, and potentially other forms of I suppose energy development, and then also other forms of potential utilisation.
And that there, when do you envisage that scheme will be fully complete and operational? And I'm presuming it's not just confined to the Lough Neagh catchment, it'll be right throughout the region, is that right?
Yeah, well, it certainly will be of benefit in terms of nutrients across Northern Ireland. The SPRIs that we have, although they're mainly focused on the Lough Neagh issue at the moment, they're a very good sort of basis for general benefits in the wider agriculture nutrient management ability.
Thank you.
Thank you. Patsy?
Yep. Thanks very much, and thank you for your time. I was just listening carefully to what you said there about you didn't know whether the algae bloom this year would be toxic or not. Can you tell me what sort of circumstances would lead to it being not toxic this year?
Again, I can give you a rough background based on sort of scientific evidence, but it would depend. There are scientific papers out there that would indicate the ratios of N and P, the exact composition of the N and P, together with temperatures and other factors, could actually influence which species of algae will grow above other species. So you could have more toxic or less toxic algae growing in particular years based on composition.
Well, they are going to be toxic.
Not necessarily. You could have.
I'm not talking about the hypothetical of what the paper. I understand to get some of what you're saying there. There are different hypotheses depending on what the mix is and what the temperature is and those types of things. But with, in all probability, what will be the same set of circumstances, the same weather, the same flow of stuff going into the loch, the same sediment that's already in the loch, the same water conditions, the same issues around the zebra mussels.
Yes.
How could that be different this year than what it was last year?
It will. There will. It isn't necessarily that it will be different. Every year we'll have slightly different scenarios where you'll have different amounts of water coming in from the different rivers, different temperatures within those different rivers, different mixing areas, and different spread within the loch. So it will depend maybe whether the blue-green algae themselves maybe take hold later in the year, earlier in the year, depending on particular flood events, depending on particular weather.
I get all that, but I'm trying to determine if it's not going to be toxic this year. Well, that'd be grand, that'd be wonderful. Yes. Probably on everybody's Christmas card list. But in your mind, to your mind and to your colleagues' mind, is the level of toxicity going to be much the same as what it was last year?
It's on the basis of what's happened over the last 2 years, it is reasonable to assume that some form of toxicity will exist. Right. I think that's
grand.
That's fair
enough. Sorry.
I can't predict entirely what's going to happen.
But it's just that initially I picked up, maybe wrongly, I'm not too sure I did, but that you couldn't say whether it's going to be toxic this year or not. Anyway, thank you for that. But what I wanted to get was back to the issue that Declan was referring to, the sustainable use of livestock slurry there. I think it's at paragraph 6. You mentioned in the evidence or the prep that you have before us here, there's mentions of jobs. There's there. It's already creating green jobs, stimulating innovation, which you would hope it is, delivering a cleaner environment and helping Northern Ireland make important strides on the road to net zero. Can you give us some sort of insight as to how many jobs it has created and where, and the level of innovation and how that's happening and where it's happening? Is it happening on farm? Is it happening in laboratories, or where is that? It sounds good. I just want a wee bit more dig down as to what in actual practice it means.
Have you got information at the moment?
No, I was going to say we'll have to get back to you on the specifics and that, because we haven't got the person who's responsible for that.
Like that paragraph 6, just a wee bit more meat on the bones as to what it actually means, please. And then if we could, I'll be brief just on this, Chair, is paragraph 9 there. The Innovation Lab, the iLab, has been commissioned to generate solutions and to establish long-term vision for considering societal, environmental, economic perspective and agree strategic. What exactly is the iLab? To me, it's a group of people sitting with all research facilities and everything. What exactly is it, and what does it do, or what is the intention for it to do?
The Innovation and Consultancy Services in DOF have been commissioned by the Minister to take this forward. Right. It's a process of working collaboratively. We've got about 50, 60 stakeholders coming to the 2-day event in the next couple of weeks. Right. And it's getting all different sort of academia, environment, local councils, all sort of different areas involved, and looking at where we see the future vision for Lough Neagh in 20 to 30 years' time, what the issues are at present, grouping them forward, and then this will lead on to a further innovation lab whereby we'll come out with a number of questions for this one, and what needs to be done, but then the overall strategic approach will be looked at a further iLab on down, so one will feed.
I'm getting that. So this isn't actually a laboratory. This is a series of
Oh
workshops.
no, it's just yeah. It's just what they call it.
No, it's just
yeah,
maybe a bit of a
I know
misnomer.
it's a terminology, but
no, that's okay. That's all right.
It's basically it's building. It's actually quite good from a stakeholder point of view as well, because again, it's building those relationships and getting people involved and thinking about a shared future vision for Lough Neagh as well. So it's getting them invested in that too.
I should say, that type of approach has been about for quite considerable years, number of years. But anyway, good luck with that one. So, thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Chair.
you very much, Patsy. JB, John Blair, please.
Thank you, and thank you all for what we've heard this morning, and also thanks to those of you who agreed to meet with me at a meeting with the Minister in local angling and conservation societies in my own constituency the other day in the meeting that was held here. Paragraph 8 of the, or point 8 of the submission that we have is, I think, the most stark reminder of the fact that there can be no complacency or no cynicism around the actions required, and also a reminder of the threat, first of all, to our natural environment and native species, but also to the reputation of what we do in this place and how we do it. I'll just read from it if I may. 100 sites have been assessed with around catchments of Lough Neagh. Catchments of concern, over 100 sites have been assessed, water quality, habitat, macroinvertebrate analysis been undertaken. Several instances of pollution have been discovered and have been referred for further action. Can I ask that, given that some of the people I had in the room with some of the officials the other day have seen pollution incidents causing wipeout of the natural environment, massive fish kills, and all that's associated with that, sometimes these instances appear to be a carbon copy of what has happened a year or two or 3 or 4 previously. What efforts could be made within the plan to best include that voluntary capacity and willingness that's out there in angling clubs, local communities, and bring these people are often the first responders to whatever happens on the ground. So how can we best ensure that they're brought into the plan and feeding into the plan as we work our way through it?
Okay, I'll maybe take that one. Just from the update of the paper that was provided, we now have in the region of 130 sites visited with the new catchment officers that were employed under the Lough Neagh funding, and those have focused on the rivers flowing into Lough Neagh. Engaging the voluntary sector, we do work closely, and we have engaged with the angling groups as to how we can take forward additional, as we discussed the other day, potentially additional training of how we can maybe support them through river fly monitoring, which is, we have looked through the Lough Neagh stakeholder working group, which we have established under the forum, and also in relation to how they can be the first responders and capture vital evidence for us to be able to take forward then, so that we have a case that we can present to the PPS to take forward for prosecution. So it's the capturing of that vital evidence that is important, and I think if we can support them in how we take that forward, I think that's going to be a very important way of engaging them. We also have the freshwater blitz, which is coming up on the 25th to 27th of April, where we have it's run by Freshwater Earthwatch, sorry, and we will be supplying a number of kits where people can actually test their water and submit it through an app online, and that will be available through open data. So we're hoping to have quite a spread across Northern Ireland through angling clubs and voluntary groups and communities, and people can register for that directly, or they can come to us and say that they're interested, and we've put a call out with key stakeholders in relation to that, so we can get enough information, enough kits for them to actually take part in that. So the citizen science piece is a really important part of the plan.
Okay, thank you, Katrina. Councils were mentioned by the Chair and others there, and understandably so, and I should have said Lough Neagh Partnership are another key player in this, and I know that they're already involved. Separately then, can I say that I am hopeful that this committee will be able to do more on water quality analysis and have put forward some proposals in that regard, which will be considered soon. But in the meantime, can we be given any further update on the role being played by the Department for Infrastructure and Northern Ireland Water? I mean, we know, because the figures have shown us very clearly, that wastewater infrastructure, or the lack or malfunction thereof, is a major contributor to the problem at Lough. So to what extent have they committed to the plan at this stage, and what plans are there to better involve them and also improve what they're doing?
Yeah, well, Action 12 of the Lough Action Plan falls under the responsibility for the Department for Infrastructure to take forward, and it's looking at Lough wastewater schemes. That is being progressed at present, but similar situation across the board in relation to funding and budget requirements and investment needed, are obviously going to impact that as well.
Can there be, and this is my final question, can there be any interim contact with them to see what improvements can be made, for example, where there are wastewater stations around the shore of the Lough, and we know that some of these are triggering concerns in multiple of the times a year that they should be. Can we therefore keep a contact with them to ensure whatever actions can be taken as we go are being taken to reduce any impacts there where possible?
They are key stakeholders. They're part of the stakeholder forum, but separately as well, we've been engaging with NI Water. Myself personally, from a programme management point of view, around communications, they'll be one of the people that we'll be developing the communication plan with, and we'll hopefully be aligning that messaging. We're also, you mentioned Lough Partnership there as well, and DFI. So, as things progress, the communications plan should be moving in one direction, and we'll have clear line messaging for the general public. I don't know if you want to say something more from...
Really from the stakeholder working group, they do sit on that as well, their catchment team in relation to work, and I know they're doing work in some of the rivers that are inflowing in relation to the sustainable catchment programme that they have, but we do work closely with them on monitoring data, and maybe Patrick in relation to the sharing of data. That is...
they're currently sitting then within the Science Oversight Group. So as part of the Lough platform, we have a governance structure within DAERA, and that includes some of the universities, AFBI, and also NI Water. So we're bringing together the data sets that NI Water hold at the moment, and we're hoping to put those on the platform later this year, and we will also be sharing our data sets with NI Water so that we are maximising the potential of those data sets, just to make sure that we have a full understanding of what's going on across the two departments. And wider field as well, bringing in universities too, bringing in co-centres, and again the AFBI research this department's paying for.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, JB. Aoife?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a few questions, if you don't mind. You've said that over 100 sites have been assessed and several instances of pollution have been discovered. So how many is several? What form of pollution is it? How impactful is it? And have any enforcements been taken?
Okay, just a small bit of detail in relation to some of those rivers that have been examined. We have identified unlicensed abstraction from commercial premises, which has been referred to the Abstraction Permit Licensing Team. We have identified potential discharge from septic tank, which has been referred to the consents team. We have identified sewage fungus growing on tributaries, which has been traced back to a source. So sources have been identified, and they have been reported to the pollution response team. And where there are discharges identified from agricultural premises, they will be reported to the Ag-Regs team. So each of those catchment officers are taking forward a series of tests in the river, but also identifying discharges and abstractions, and those are referred to the relevant teams. So there have been, that's just an example of 4 areas of river where there have been 4 things identified.
Okay. And
I'm not saying that's all of them, but that's
in
an
terms
example.
of enforcement then?
Well, that will work through. The team has been really only commenced work in October, so these have been referred through, and in order for pollution response teams to respond, then they will go through their processes and apply the enforcement policy according to what's found.
Okay. And just the innovation lab sounds like a good initiative. We'd like to be updated on the outcomes, but is there any more detail on the studentships and how much funding is available and how many applications were received?
That's from the PhD studentships. I'm not sure how many applications were received. The closing date, I think, was the 25th of February, and I think we have a few weeks to actually get round to evaluating those and getting them out. I think that the date for commencement is in October. There were, I can get back with the exact figures on the number of PhDs this year and the applications in due course.
Fine. Thank you, Cormac.
Thank you, Aoife. And Tom?
Thank you, Chair. With regards to your actions, 10 actions have been delivered, 23 are progressing, 4 yet to be progressed. What are they?
The 4 remaining ones, there's 2 are impacted by resource implications, or actually all 4 I think are resource, and one's actually connected to 2 other actions that need to be progressed in relation to fines and penalties. So there's really, one's interdependent on other actions taking place, which is why it's not being progressed, but the 3 then that are technically not being progressed, the pilot tree planting, which we're hoping will be moved in the next month or 2. There is a way forward has been looked at in that. The scope of a community challenge fund and association will Live Here, Love Here, and the introduction of a fertiliser database, and they're sort of resource-led ones.
Okay. I did hear earlier where you talked about on the farmland, and there was obviously work that has been done with farmers. There was 40 farmers or something that was looked at and so forth. So there is some work progressing there. What proposals has come forward from NI Water as to what they're going to be doing to stop the amount of sewage that they're putting into the Lough every year? So has there been any proposals coming forward as yet from NI Water as to what action they're going to take to reduce this amount of sewage?
I think that links a wee bit to the action that is in progress, and I know there's a lot of work going on with the water regulation team in NIA and the water reform programme in relation to how we work with NI Water and the work that they need to do to take forward enhancements or whatever is required at wastewater treatment works. And that is tied heavily to the funding issues that NI Water are currently experiencing. So there is a lot of work ongoing, but I can't give you a definitive on what exactly will be taken forward, because that's for NI Water's strategic direction to decide.
When will you have some knowledge as to what they are proposing to bring forward to reduce that?
They do have their PC21 programme, which identifies the work that they had planned to take forward, but based on resource availability, that will be determined on what funding they have available.
I noticed from the actions that the majority of these, the 37 actions, the majority are attributed to DERA. Yet, you know, Northern Ireland Water is one of the bigger polluters perhaps into the Lough, and really that needs to be taken on hand, and needs to be you need to ensure that throughout this whole process that has been dealt with in an effective way.
And I think Minister's very clear that, you know, all sources of pollution have to be considered. It's not targeted to one particular sector, and he would be very aware of the issues that are occurring from NI Water sources as well.
Thank you, Tom. Not sure if there's any more questions. That was been raised in the chamber, that when we're working with farmers or landowners or whatever it is, that if government and statutory aren't leading the way, it'll be very hard to see change, and I think that's certainly the time that we want to get to. I've just one final one, just look through the papers there, just a very quick one if that's okay. Paragraph 7, it talks about recruiting an additional 28 water quality inspectors, and 21 recruited and 28. Do you have any idea of what that organisational structure looks like? Is that 28 operational people on the ground, or does 28 look like, hopefully it doesn't look like 26 managers and 2 operational staff?
No, I can give you the information in relation to that, because the majority of them sit under my team. We have a number of teams where posts have been identified, and that is in relation to the monitoring. So the freshwater, we have a new lake monitoring and assessment team, which is focused on the monitoring, and in relation to, and also for the blue-green algae app, the verification of that, and the information coming in over the heavy period of the summer season. So there was 4 posts identified for that. The priority, the restructuring within the unit created a priority catchments team, some from existing resource, and then there were 8 posts identified to take forward the focused cross-compliance work. Now some of those, that involves the administrative support and the inspectors on the ground, because that's a process that has to be delivered through mapping and all of that sort of background work as well. The priority catchments team that I referred to, that are out doing the work, we have 4 posts identified there. The integrated catchment planning team, which covers river basin management planning, and there was 2 posts identified there to look forward to obviously the work on the 3rd cycle plan, looking forward to the 4th cycle plan, and the significant water management issues report that has to be worked through this year. The water pollution response and enforcement team got 2 extra staff to take forward and to support the work of preparation PPS case files, and also in relation to correspondence on that. The water regulation team, which includes the drinking water inspectorate and the water regulation with regard to utility regulation and consents, between those 2 teams there was 5 staff. So, and then a leadership post as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And that's, I think everybody's content at this stage. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll look forward to having you around again for further updates. Thank you.
Your time.
Members, if you're minded, we will take a very, very short break. I'm going to be very keen to start again at no later than 11:45, if that's okay. So if you want to powder your nose, we will now move into closed session. Powder my nose.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Three actions there. Now back in open session, guys, because we do have quorum. Just for clarity, for accuracy, we did not move into closed session. We literally just took a moment's break, a comfort break, and we're now back in public session. Okay, so just before we move on to agenda item 7, I just want to wrap up the questions pertain to the last session that we will be, in terms of any correspondence. So Clark, do you want to read through your points there?
Chair, officials agreed to respond on the detail of the capital allocation for the Lough project.
Yep.
Also agreed to provide some more information on the detail of paragraph 6 of their response. Also there was discussion about getting updated on the outcome of the iLab 2 days. Yeah. I think it was John Blair asked about paragraph 6, but was there something else you had as well?
Yeah, the piece that I had was particularly around the capital, which is 12.8 million. It's a considerable amount of money in comparison to the resource deal. So I think that is anybody anything else that they picked up in terms of response? No, content. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is the SL1, the Suckler Cow Scheme Regulations Northern Ireland 2025. Members are going to refer you to page 31 to 45 of table papers for this item. And we had a policy briefing on this scheme at our meeting last week in advance of this. However, before we get into the detail, I'd like to state for the record that, and we have raised this a number of times, that it isn't acceptable for departmental papers, for main agenda items and in particular legislative items, to not be received in time for the main pack, and that these should be issued to the team as early as possible. For members on a Monday afternoon, table papers usually issued on a Wednesday are meant for urgent items and potential items from the clerk that the team have been working on for us, such as notes of informal meetings. The committee team issued these SL1s in an early table papers on Tuesday, so we would get as much time as possible to consider them before today, and then the team updated the table papers again today. I can confirm that we have received an SL1 on the quality of bathing water amendment regulations Northern Ireland 2025 and plenty of time for next week's pack, so maybe the department has already taken note, I think. And members, have you any comments you want to make on that just before we do move on? No? Okay. Members, the department intends to make this statutory rule to establish the Suckler Cow Scheme, which will incentivise farm businesses to increase the percentage of eligible calving events within the Northern Ireland Suckler herd that achieve a reduced age at first calving or calving interval over a 4-year phased implementation period. The aim is to help improve overall farm productivity and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The SR will be led before the Assembly under negative resolution procedure and subject to executive approval. It's anticipated that will come into operation on the 1st of April 2025, and I welcome the following officials to brief us on the SL1. Just for accuracy, we probably covered most of the ground last week at the policy briefing. But if you would like to, Dr. Rosenregnew and Avian McMullen, if there's anything you want to then brief us on in regards to the SL1 or any other matters. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just from a department's point of view, I think we are aware of your concerns around the late tabling of papers, and I know that we're working to address those. And can I just apologise for the late tabling of these papers? I'm not totally au fait with when you received them, but we'll certainly look into that from a department's perspective. Can also thank you, Mr Chairman, for the opportunity to bring forward to the committee the negative statutory rule that you've referred to, really to put in place the Suckler cow scheme. And as you indicated, the committee received an oral briefing on the scheme, or a policy briefing, last week. You've outlined the objectives of the scheme, and the Suckler cow scheme regulations Northern Ireland give DAERA the legal powers to introduce the scheme, as you've indicated, from the 1st of April 2025. The regulations set into legislation the annual targets for age at first calving and for calving interval, the eligibility criteria for farm businesses and animals, the Northern Ireland quantitative limit of 222,000 calving events per annum, and a payment rate of £100 for each eligible calving event. At this stage, Chair and members, I was just going to finish, and Avian and I are happy to answer any questions members have on the regulations.
Thank you, really appreciate that, Rosemary, and thanks for the in-depth briefing opportunity last week. I'm just going to throw straight out to members because I know there is some interest, if it's okay, and I'll maybe do a workshop. Declan?
Thank you for that presentation, and also I did get the opportunity to get some details of the event that we had in Lough College in Cookstown, which is very helpful. And I've been speaking to farmers who've been attending the road shows that the department's been organising to explain the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, including the Suckler scheme, and the feedback has been very good. And I think you have a few more planned for this week, Rosemary, I believe. So well done on that. I suppose the question I want to ask is, effectively the department has set a regional quota of 222,000 calves. Is there, and I know there had been previously certainly mooted in or discussed that there might be like a farm quota effectively, but is there a danger that if you just set a regional quota that the very large farmers would sort of eat up all that quota at the expense of the smaller farmers?
Thank you, Declan, and thank you very much for your comments around the couple of events you mentioned. We have set a regional quantitative limit or quota of 222,000 calving events. Those calving events can either be for a live or dead calf, provided that calf is BVD sampled, registered and tagged. But initially we had considered on-farm quotas. Minister asked us to ensure that the schemes that we were bringing forward were as simple, as accessible and less bureaucratic, and to look at all of those elements in the development of these schemes. So we felt, and we have pursued, and Minister has agreed to set that quantitative limit at a regional level, a Northern Ireland level, in the same way as the beef carbon reduction one. But we will continually review the scheme to look for any unintended consequences, such as the one you've highlighted. Minister has already asked us to review the scheme 6 months in and 2 years in, and that's set in motion in our programme plan for moving forward. And should there be any unintended consequences, we will obviously brief the committee and will take swift action to try to mitigate that. And a swift action might be, at its worst, revoke the SR completely if we see an unintended consequence. But that's obviously not where we want to be, because this scheme is open to all farmers who have suckler cows, provided they meet the age at first calving and the calving events, calving intervals. So we would hope that there won't be a huge expansion of animals on those larger farms, and if there are, we will need to step in to take some action around the scheme.
Thank you. And Rosemary, do you see then on the briefing note that if the quota is exceeded, there'll be like a linear reduction? Could you explain how do you do that? How do you do that? What will that mean? How will that be implemented?
Maybe ask Avian if she will take that one.
Yes, thanks, Declan. If in a case where the Northern Ireland quantitative limit of 222,000 calving events per year is exceeded, linear reduction will be applied at farm level. So if the quantitative limit is exceeded, say by 10%, there'll be a similar percentage reduction on each farm business. then on the number of calving events that will receive payment. So that's basically how it will work.
Thanks, Avian. So then, just to double back in, so there'll be a 6-month review, and if you discover, for example, that there's a particular sector of farming that are being disadvantaged or disproportionately impacted, that will be looked at by the department.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a 6-month review and a review after 2 years. And if we discover an unintended consequence of the scheme in those reviews, we will look at what we can do to mitigate those unintended consequences. And as I said to you, the most draconian of those measures would be to come to the committee to revoke the SR, because there's an unintended consequence. But we would hope we don't go there.
Yeah. That's great. And I think I know that the roadshow's coming until the West Room, instead of saying next Thursday. Have you got the dates of the other ones that are left, Rosemary, by any chance?
Maybe if I could ask you to keep that one until Albert joins me in the front for the next item, because Albert's really leading those events from a CAFRE point of view. So if I could ask you just to hold those questions for Albert.
Get ahead of myself here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Declan. Michelle.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you, Rosemary Avian. You've mentioned that there's a linear reduction if there is the calving events exceed 222,000. What happens if the calving events don't exceed 222,000? Is there a linear enhancement?
Not at this point is there a linear enhancement, and I think that's where we're keen to look at the 6-month review and the 2-year review to look at what we do with that quantitative limit. As we explained the last week, the quantitative limit is the average over a 3-year period of the calving events that happen on farms. So hopefully, there's a good opportunity there for farmers to increase their number of eligible calving events in order to receive a payment. But you're really asking if there's headroom, what happens? At this stage, we have no plans to change that quantitative limit, and that would fit into the review that we're going to undertake. And I think, to be realistic, it's unlikely we would change it after 6 months. But after 2 years, I think there's probably more of an opportunity to have a proper look at it and a more detailed look at it. And if it was, let's say, the right thing to do, and it was based on evidence, we would look at that and obviously come forward with proposals for change.
I suppose an additional concern would be that if that limit isn't met and there is additional monies left over within the scheme, that money is retained within the scheme as opposed to going back into the department to be used elsewhere.
Well, as you know, the executive has in its consultation indicated that this budget is earmarked for agriculture, agri-environment and rural development, and it's been specific around those particular 3 issues. So the budget would have to remain within activities associated with that. I can't say to you what will happen as we move forward, but certainly the plans are that the funding would be maintained within the SAP programme, for example.
Okay. And I know we've had a discussion before in relation to the opening of the scheme and how it's now April to the end of March. I've had a little bit of feedback where farmers perhaps feel that the dates maybe aren't with what they're used to, and it might take some time to get used to that and managing those sort of different. There's a number of different deadlines now within the farming calendar which they're going to have to get their heads around. Was there any thought about maybe, regardless of the issues I know around budget, but looking at it as a calendar year?
We did look at it as a calendar year, but as we explained last week, to delay it to 2026 would have quite a significant impact on our greenhouse gas emissions that we've modelled as part of our climate action plan. There was also great interest in getting the scheme out there from a number of farm businesses and organisations, so it was trying to find a balance that would work. We recognise that given the spread in calving events cover the months of January through to December, and I think we may have provided to the committee, and if we haven't, we can do. I'm looking at them here. They range from 4% of calving events in January through to 19% in April, and then back to 4% in November. So there's quite a range of calving events that are registered in NIFAS, and I think irrespective of where you started the year, there was always going to be an issue. Now, to try to help farmers, and we can speak a little bit more about that when we come on to knowledge, One of the areas very specific to the Suckler cow scheme is there will be a full suite of knowledge packages become available to help farmers achieve the targets and to understand the schemes. And indeed at the events, and Albert can pick up on it in the next session, there is a presentation on achieving the targets around Suckler cow scheme. So we're trying to help, and we're trying to provide the knowledge and the information as far as is possible.
Okay, and I've also had a little bit of feedback from those who aren't in the beef sector at all, and the fact that they perhaps feel a little disadvantaged with this scheme, obviously, because they don't have cattle.
There are cattle on a significant number, beef cattle on a significant number of our farms. I think it's somewhere around, and I'm going to say this off the top of my head because I'm looking at Avian here, beef cattle I think on around 17,000 farms, unless Avian gives me a different number, of the 24,000. So there are a small number of farms who potentially will be disadvantaged. But those farms will have the opportunity for other schemes, such as the Farm Sustainability Transition Payment, or the Farm Sustainability Payment, and the Farming with Nature package, which will be rolled out later in the year. I recognise, we respond to many queries around disadvantages from various sectors, but the Beef Carbon Reduction Scheme and the Suckler Cow Scheme have been in development since 2022. We are resource constrained, and we will gradually get to all of the other sectors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Avian and Rosemary, for coming in. Rosemary, given the fact that many farmers, well, all farmers who calve pre-April 1st won't be eligible, a lot of them no doubt will be facing some cash flow issues. Are there any measures in place for those farmers who may be affected?
All farmers, if they meet the calving interval and the eligible calving events targets, will be eligible for payment on all of their cows if they meet the targets over the 4-year period. And the 4-year period runs from April to March each year. I probably would push back a little bit at you and say I don't think just because they calve in January, February and March they are disadvantaged, because in fact on the data that we hold, only 4% of suckler herds have calving events solely between January and March.
Just go over that stat again.
Only 4% of suckler herds, around 500, only have calving events between January and March. So we have looked at this and we've examined it, and Avian showed me a stat there a few minutes ago. I think that there are 13,000 suckler herds.
In terms of that percentage broken down to a specific number, would you have data on that in terms of the amount of farmers? No, it's 4%, but how many would that?
It's around 500. It's around 500 farms.
And Rosemary, just another one from myself. In terms of the Equality Impact Assessment and the Rural Needs Assessment, I know they're mentioned in the table papers here, but could we, and maybe they're included somewhere in the pack, I just haven't seen them, could we as a committee get both of those assessments as carried out by the department?
Absolutely. They will be published on the department website as part of our normal practice anyway, but I don't believe they've been forwarded to the committee in this instance, but they can certainly be shared with the committee because they are completed.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Chair.
William.
Thank you. Again, thank Rosemary and the team. The briefing we got in Kirkstown a few weeks ago was very useful. I think we all would accept that. In relation to sucklers eligible, only farms that currently keep suckler cows are going to be eligible. Is that the case? No room for new farmers into the scheme, is there?
I would have said that any farm that holds suckler cows, provided they come in, if someone starts up as a suckler herd in year 2 of the scheme, they would need to meet the targets in year 2 of the scheme.
Yeah, but
they can't come in at year 1. But it's not only eligible to farms that currently have suckler cows. So it does allow new entrants to come in, but they have to meet the targets in the year in which they join the scheme and they first enter or apply into the scheme or opt into the scheme. Each farm business can opt into the scheme once at the beginning of the 4-year period, or separately if they come in year 2 or year 3, they can opt in year 2 or year 3, and that opts them in for the remainder of the scheme.
That's good. That's okay. Thank you.
Any other members? I've got a very technical question just in here. Is anybody any other questions for Rosemary? No. I just want to be very careful how I suggest this, or get some detail around it, because I'm certainly not asking for an addition to the SR at this stage. So in Table 3, it sets out some of the conditions which would exclude a payment based on NIFAS. One of them is calves with BVDU, so bovine viral diarrhea unknown. First of all, what does unknown signify in regard to BVDU? And is that reasonable? Is that just a carry across from previous schemes? and notice, and it's not that I wanted added in there, but what's the difference in the bovine diarrhea being a precursor and TB not being mentioned in that table?
Avian, do you want to answer the BVDU one, please?
Yeah. BVD unknown means that there's been no confirmative test result to show that the animal either has a positive or a negative test. And normally once that test result comes through on the NIFAS system, that code changes from BVDU to the appropriate status. So it should only apply for a short time in the animal's life. So it should.
This is an unfair question. How close are we to addressing bovine viral diarrhea then?
I think that's a question for our animal health colleagues
in
Veterinary Service Animal Health Group, and I know they will be coming forward to brief you on that. I think in relation to your question around TB, we have discussed at some length with our NIFAS colleagues and also our veterinary colleagues which of these, and I'll call them the NIFAS acronyms, if I can call them that, we should put into this scheme at its beginning, and those are the ones that we feel are appropriate at this time. But we do recognise that TB is sort of the elephant in the room. But at this point, I suppose a herd that has TB, provided it's following all its biosecurity, its testing arrangements, why should that farm be disadvantaged if there's a calving event on that farm? And that's maybe the way I would pose that. We don't feel at this point that we would want to disadvantage that farm.
Good answer. That's a good answer. I like that, Rosemary. Thank you very much. Okay, members? Content with that one? Okay. Members, are you agreed that the department proceeds to make the SR and we will then consider it and the ESR report in due course? Members content? Thank you. Yes, we're content. Thank you. Now, agenda item 8 is the SL1, the Farming for Sustainability Knowledge Transfer Payment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025. I refer you, members, to pages 47 to 53 of the table papers. For this item, the Department intends to make a statutory rule to introduce the Farming for Sustainability Knowledge Scheme, providing for payments to be made to eligible farm businesses in relation to hosting visits as part of the scheme. The SR will be led before the Assembly under the negative resolution procedure and subject to executive approval. It is anticipated that it will come into operation on the 1st of April 2025. So I welcome the following officials to brief the committee on the SR and then answer any questions on the briefing. And I don't even think you changed seats there. Rosemary Neagh?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I just
surprised. Good on you. And then we have Mr. Albert Johnson, the Acting Head of Knowledge Advisory Service. What a title. We're expecting big things of you now, just so you know that.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you would like to brief the committee.
Albert's going to lead on this one. So
thank you.
Okay. Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to bring forward to the committee the negative statutory rule to put in place the legislation for the Farming for Sustainability Knowledge Scheme. The committee previously received a briefing on the knowledge schemes at the meeting on the 12th or the 2nd of July 2024. The Farming for Sustainability Knowledge Schemes, part of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, seeks to widen DAER's knowledge transfer provision by providing a suite of flexible and accessible interventions to meet the range of knowledge needs of people working in farm businesses. These interventions will include information, training and peer learning groups. In developing the scheme, consultations have been held with the Agricultural Policy Stakeholder Group as part of the ongoing engagement regarding the Sustainable Agriculture Programme. The Farming for Sustainability Knowledge Transfer Payments Regulations Northern Ireland 2025 gives DAERA the legal powers to make payments of £786 to eligible farm businesses in relation to hosting visits as part of the scheme. Also included is a specific payment of £445 to eligible farm businesses within business sustainability groups to support learning both individually and as a group. The rule will be laid before the Assembly under the negative resolution procedure, and it is anticipated that it will come into operation on the 1st of April 2025. Mr Chairman, Rosemary and I are happy to answer any questions members may have on these regulations.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just got the bill open here. I want to just, it's another, looks like on the face of it, a very good scheme. In terms of the facilitation of an on-site visit, and obviously there's a number of things that need to be put in place to ensure the biosecurity and all of those type of things. So it doesn't come without some work for those that will enter the scheme. This is a very functional question. In terms of the time of the day that it would suit to facilitate something, is this something is expected to be delivered in a 9 to 5 space, or is it flexible to work in around the times of the business to minimise the disruption to any farm business?
So, Mr Chairman, we recognise that there's a wide spread within our agricultural industry. Some farmers are full-time, some farmers are part-time, and in our previous business development groups and knowledge transfer schemes, we have delivered a range of our knowledge transfer programmes both during the day and in the evenings. And again, that is our intention going forward, that the timing of the events will be scheduled to suit the availability of those working within the industry and the needs of our agricultural farm businesses. So we are flexible and we will address specific needs. And again, the timing of these events will be there to suit farmers.
Okay. There's another wee piece in there in the papers. I think it's £3.1 million over 5 years, the cost of running the scheme. What's the anticipated or the ambition for the uptake on an annual basis?
Yeah. Within year one of the scheme, it is planned and subject to ministerial approval that we will recruit up to 1,300 participants into business sustainability groups and 1,300 farm businesses into themed groups. This will increase over a 5-year period to 1,800 farm businesses in each of the types of groups. And again, there's also funding available for the other knowledge levels of information and training, and that makes up the full component of that average payment per year.
And my final one from me, is there an anticipated demographic of farmer or is this going to mesh with the farming for generations, for instance? Is this anticipated any overlaps with any other schemes that are part of the SAP?
These programmes are open to all farm businesses, so we encourage representation and applications from all businesses across all sectors, age and gender to the programmes, and we're very open, and through our recruitment and promotion of the programmes we will seek to give wide promotion so that we can get as many people involved in all levels of our knowledge transfer programmes as possible.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Declan?
Chair, and thank you for the information. And I certainly can see the logic of hosting events on farms to share knowledge and information. Actually, I know farmers and local business development groups who do avail of that, but this is probably something that's addressed anyway. I just looking through the regulations here, obviously it makes reference to the importance of biosecurity and health and safety. What way does the indemnity work if you're hosting an event on your farm?
For each farm business that hosts a visit, we would ask that business to have their own public liability insurance, and that is reflected in I suppose one of the elements linked back to the provision of the payment for that. But businesses largely do have that as part of their core farm business insurance, and again we would check that's in place prior to the event taking place on farm.
So the onus would be on the hosting farm.
The hosting farmer would have
ensure
that.
They have public liability insurance.
Public liability.
Would that be a deterrence? Would every farm have public liability insurance?
Generally, in the previous programme, we haven't found that as an issue, and for some particular farm businesses that maybe don't have it in place as a standard, some of the insurance companies are willing to put cover in place for the event to take place on their farm.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Patsy.
Thanks very much. Thank you for your presentation. £445, what's that for, please?
Yeah, I suppose from our evaluation of our previous programmes, we've found that really to add value in terms of that peer-to-peer learning, it's the importance of farmers sharing information, or not only that they have access to it to help inform their own decisions on their farm, but they can share it with others as part of that group. So the £445 is there to support that farmer in the collection, analysis and presentation of that data, and also for attending the meetings to share that. In our previous programme, we would have had, DAERA would have funded data collectors to go out on farms and actually collect that data and support the farmers. But as part of this programme, we're giving the farmer the responsibility and saying, look, here's the money, you can use that money to get the necessary support to collect the information or bring in expertise to help collect that data that's relevant to you to help you make your decisions on your own farm.
What sort of information are you talking about?
It can be a wide range. In our previous programmes, it mainly focused on financial details, financial benchmarking of gross margin and net profit. But we recognise in the move to businesses are moving we're focused on sustainability. That will look at a range of things from financial, grass growth, herd performance data like calving interval or age at first calving, and a wide range of sustainability measures within that as well. And that payment is there to help and support the farm business owner to, again, either collect the data themselves and analyse the data themselves, or bring in the necessary expertise to support them in collecting that.
I understand the incentivisation of it, but you're not going to get a wide pile of expertise for £445.
And again, a lot of it it's the data that we're looking at is information that's readily available to the farmer. And again, a lot of it, the information they're collecting as part of VAT records or milk records or beef sales. So a lot of it is readily, it's actually that bit of a resource just to actually collate it and pull it into a format that is presented in front of the farmer to help them make the necessary decisions, but also to share with others in the group and saying, look, this is how I've addressed a specific problem, and this is the information that I used to address that particular problem.
And I think if I could just add, as part of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, we have the Soil Nutrient Health Scheme. So, for example, the Department's already funding that Soil Nutrient Health Scheme. We will hope to fund the carbon footprinting or the carbon footprint of the farm, and the learner support payment will also incentivise the farmer to share that information, which the Department has already helped the farmer obtain with his colleagues, and then discuss the mitigations that they are using either to improve their nutrient management plan or to reduce their carbon footprint. And all of those things will be teased out in these groups, and the technical information needed is what the groups will discuss. And we'd hope the farmer would be able to say, the host farmer would be able to say, well, I have done this and that has reduced my emissions by this, or has this is what my soil analysis is, I've developed this nutrient management plan, and as a result of that I have used X tonnes less fertiliser. That has made my farm more profitable, and that's how the profitability links to the environmental sustainability.
Just one wee thing has cropped into my head here. Is that taxable? If it's a grant or is it income? Just,
I don't. We need to take that one away because we're
Yeah,
not.
just-
We're
that's
not.
okay.
We're not.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
tax. We're not HMRC, and I think
No,
we
no,
need
you're
to take
not,
that
but
one away.
the
and look
farmer,
at.
the farmer potentially could be. So.
It is a source of income, and again, without specific advice from an accountant, we think it probably would need to be discussed with an accountant to get clear guidance on
If it is a source of income, then it is.
Yeah.
It's not a grant. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more other questions, I've just got one wee question. It's to be technical one. I mean, not that overly technical, but maybe picked up in the guidance. It's in regard to Article 4. So it says here, if the farm is not suitable due to biosecurity or health and safety reasons, goes on a wee bit further. But who decides that?
Yeah, it's for farms there that aren't suitable to have it host their event on farm. They can host their event at an alternative venue. Before any event would take place, we would get advice from our veterinary service to see, is that farm business under any TB restrictions. If there is a TB restriction on the farm due to biosecurity, we wouldn't host a visit on that farm, but it doesn't exclude that farm business from availing of this, and you can have the meeting at an alternative venue. The farmer comes along with their information, explains how they're managing that particular element of their business to their peers.
There'd be a list of biosecurity issues, so it'd be avian flu, TB, whatever, and similarly the health and safety reasons.
Health and safety, we work through with them to do a health and safety or risk assessment on that farm prior to the visit, just to ensure that everything's safe before the group would attend.
Members content?
Okay. Chair, I'm just very conscious I didn't give Declan an answer earlier to a question he asked about awareness events. And Declan, I now can't really remember your question other than where are the next events,
yes,
I think?
Yeah, I know that they're coming down. I know they're in my part of the world, in Westerfield, next Thursday, but I suppose just an opportunity just to remind people of what the public information events that are lined out for this week and next week, Albert.
Yeah, so far we've had 4 events which have been well attended, and again there's an event today in Coleraine in the Bushtown Hotel with information events throughout the day and again at 7:30 this evening, and we have 2 events scheduled for next week, one in Strabane on Monday, and then the second one and the final of the series of 7 is in Ballynahinch next Wednesday. And again, we are trying to encourage all farmers and farm businesses to attend those, to hear the full details of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, but also the opportunity to discuss with CAFRE advisors and CAFRE staff the details of each of the schemes and how the schemes can benefit their own farm businesses.
Albert, am I right in saying that the event lasts an entire day? Isn't there presentations like 11, 2:30 and then the evening time, and farmers can have one-to-ones in between those times, is that right?
Yeah, as you said, Declan, the presentations are at 11, 2 o'clock and 7:30. So after the presentations, there's an opportunity, the attendees can go and speak, and they're free to stay there as long and ensure, and we do encourage everybody that attends to not to leave that event with any questions or issues. And again, if we are unable to answer a particular question at the event, we are taking the details and returning the information back to those folks to provide them with the necessary information.
I think that's a good format, because not every farmer wants to speak out in a public forum, especially if it's about their own business, so it's a good opportunity for them to have a one-to-one opportunity as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Just for accuracy, it's in Strabane's the Fir Trees Hotel, and in Ballynahinch it's the Millbrook Lodge Hotel, but I don't think you meant that it's a free stay you get for going, just for accuracy, in case the department ends up with lots of bills, people saying, well, the guy, Albert says there's a free stay at the hotel. No, but thank you very much and well picked out. Thank you, guys. Okay. We've now finished the questions. Our members agreed that the department proceeds to make the SR, and then we will consider it and the SR report in due course. Yeah. Thank you, members. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. Agenda item 9 is the SL1, the direct payments to farmers cross compliance revocation regulations, Northern Ireland 2025. I refer you to pages 149 to 153 of the pack for the papers for this item. The department intends to make a statutory rule subject to negative resolution which will revoke the provisions made under SR 2024-211, the direct payments to farmers cross compliance amendment regulations, Northern Ireland 2024. As you recall, the prayer of annulment was supported at the Assembly on the 4th of February 2025, and the revocation action is now required. Members, have you any further comments on this, or are you content that the department take forward this SR to revoke SR 2024-211? Yeah. I imagine you are. Thank you. Agenda item 10 is the Agriculture Bill. Refer you to pages 57 to 88 of the table papers for the responses we received on Citizen Space, and also the written papers we have taken on the oral briefings. This is in preparation for our deliberations on the bill. A summary table will be provided in next week's pack. Members, just a reminder that not all respondents wish to have their details or responses made publicly available. So these are provided in confidence to the committee, and the team will redact where necessary before they are published on our website or in the final report. Our members agreed to commence the deliberations at next week's meeting. Yeah. Thank you, members. Are you agreed that the responses are now published on the committee's website with the relevant redactions that are needed and required? Yeah. Thank you, members. Members, I also refer you to pages 55 to 56 of the table papers for the letter from the Minister dated the 4th of March regarding the fruit and veg aid scheme, stating that after following committee evidence sessions to date, he has decided he will not be closing the FVAS at the end of 2025. This will allow producer organisations with a head office in Northern Ireland to submit a new operational programme for approval. in September 2025. He has also instructed officials to begin preparatory work on a replacement scheme to be developed in co-design with the horticulture sector, informed by the ongoing policy review of the current FEIS. Members, I'm sure you'll agree with me, this is a very welcome and timely development as we go into deliberations on this bill. I understand the Minister wished to give us first sight of these plans today before making a formal announcement to stakeholders. So members, if you have any comments to make, are you content to note until our deliberations formally start next week?
Yep. No, I'm obviously content, but I suppose it sort of underlines the importance of having evidence sessions as well, and the scrutiny mechanism that the committee has around all of this. I suppose, given the fact that this payment is still gone, although it's been extended for a further year, it might be useful to get some correspondence or comments from the sector to see whether or not they're still content with that, because obviously there was a considerable amount of negativity, but just to be sure that they're happy with what's being outlined.
Sure, we'll have to do that. No problem. Thank you, Michelle. Declan?
I was actually going to propose the same, and also just welcome it, and it sort of cited as a good example of the Minister and the Department, listen to deliberations and the sector, and taking on board and making these changes, and that's a good thing. But it would be definitely useful to go back to the sector just to get their steer on it.
Absolutely fair comments, guys, because we do point out to them when papers come late, but when they get it right, they should similarly be able to correspond with that. But we need to make sure we're speaking for the sector in that regard too. So Michelle's points are well made, and we'll act on that. Okay, members, we're going to move on to agenda item 11. This is the UK Emissions Trading Scheme, the ETS Common Framework. Refer you to pages 156 to 163 of the pack for the papers for this item. The departmental briefing on the provisions of the UK ETS Common Framework dated the 2nd of December, and follow-up correspondence to the briefing we had on the 5th of December from the department dated the 27th of February regarding UK ETS Common Framework. For background, at our meeting on the 26th of September, we received the paper from DERA on the status of the 15 common frameworks for which DERA is the NICS lead. The previous ERA committee scrutinised 9 of these, and we agreed to arrange a briefing from DERA officials on the remaining common frameworks. That process started for this committee at the meeting on the 5th of December when we had an oral briefing on the UK ETS Common Framework. The ETS Common Framework sets out the governance structures and decision-making processes in relation to the implementation and ongoing development of the UK ETS by the UK ETS Authority. Members, be heard that the UK ETS Common Framework is already operating on provisional basis pending completion of scrutiny and finalisation, and the structures and arrangements are set out in the document from the basis of the ongoing operation of the UK ETS. Also, the letter from DERA dated the 27th of February reminds us that the obligation remains for Northern Ireland under the terms of the Windsor Framework to continue to implement the EU emissions trading system in respect of electricity generation. The Department has stated in this letter that it does not have any concerns to date with respect to the operation of the UK ETS. Members, we have had considerable number of briefings on the operation of the UK ETS. The Department would now be grateful if the committee would advise if it is content to agree that it has completed scrutiny of this common framework on the basis of the briefings already provided. All the common frameworks will be reviewed once all parliaments have signed off on the provisional frameworks, so they are not set in stone. With regard to the other jurisdictions, just to bring up the speed, when officials briefed us on the 5th of December, they confirmed the scrutiny has been completed by the Scottish Parliament. It is content to proceed, but will monitor the operation of the framework in practice. Scrutiny has also been completed by the House of Lords, following examination by the Common Framework Scrutiny Committee, and the Climate Change, Environment and Infrastructure Committee of the Welsh Senate did not intend to undertake scrutiny of the Common Framework at that time. Members, are you content that our scrutiny is complete, and we will keep a watching brief on the operations of the UK ETS and look forward to considering DERA's input to the future review of the ETS Common Framework? Members content? Yep. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 12 is correspondence. Members are referred to correspondence dated.
Sorry, Chair, can I just go back? Are you content that we write then to the department to confirm that?
Well,
yeah,
because that's what they're, right back to respond to them, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Agenda item 12, refer to correspondence dated 25th of February at pages 165 to 176 of the pack from the Department regarding quarterly sickness absence in Northern Ireland Civil Service from October 24 to December 24. We considered a response from DERA on this matter earlier in the meeting. Have you anything else to add, or are you content to note? Content to note, thank you. Members, I refer you to correspondence from the Department dated 27th of February at pages 177 to 178 of the pack regarding the consultation on the environmental report for the Combined Ammonia Strategy and Operational Protocol as part of the Strategic Environmental Assessment SEA process. A copy of the SEA environmental report can be found at pages 179 to 379 of your pack. Members, additional consultation on the proposed ammonia strategy is planned as part of the forthcoming consultation on the Nutrients Action Programme Review, 2025. An 8-week consultation on the report for the combined proposed ammonia strategy and revised operational protocol was due to commence on the 28th of February and runs until the 25th of April. The report will be accompanied by publication of the revised operational protocol and an update on the proposed ammonia strategy. Any comments to make at this stage? Are you content to note? Okay. Members are referred a member from the Clerk to the Public Accounts Committee dated 28th of February, page 380 of the packet, advising that at its meeting on the 27th of February, the committee agreed to release the following reports. One is the Northern Ireland Non-Domestic Renewable Heat Incentive Scheme, assessing progress with the implementation of the public inquiry recommendations, and the Northern Ireland Non-Domestic Renewable Heat Incentive Scheme, assessing progress with the implementation of the public inquiry recommendations. Second report. Okay. I thought I was repeating myself, but second report. Members, have you any comments to make on that? Are you content to note? You look like you're content to note. Thank you. Agenda item 13, forward work member plan programme. A draft forward work programme can be found in table papers at pages 90 to 92. Do you agree that the forward work plan is published? Are there any comments to make? Okay, content to publish. Thank you. Members, just to remind you that next week we'll be holding the planning session after the meeting, staying in room 21. Lunch will be provided as the planning session is likely to run from 12 until about 2 o'clock or just after. Papers will be issued next week, including the summary table updating the status of the actions we agreed after the first planning meeting, which was last April. Members, is there any other business?
Sure.
Michelle?
Thank you. I spoke to you earlier in the week just in relation to the A5, and you'll recall that we did have a joint committee meeting with the Committee for Infrastructure, and obviously that work has now progressed in that land has now been taken, is now being cleared, but there are still some outstanding issues with regards to the impact on farmers, compensation payments and so on, and we're still in a situation where there will be farm buildings and so on will have to be replaced, and we've still got this sort of issue around ammonia and the impact on the planning system. And I was wondering whether there would be opportunity perhaps to revisit some of that in conjunction with the Committee for Infrastructure, and perhaps maybe reach out again to the UFU too, just with regards to the impact on their members.
Sure, I think it'd be useful to get an update on that. I've had some other traffic just through councillors myself just raising concerns in that respect too, so happy to work out somehow we would advise some kind of an update.
Chair, are you proposing, Michelle, another concurrent meeting?
Well,
or?
It might be useful even just for the clerks to have a conversation, and perhaps the chairs at this stage in advance maybe of next week's meeting, just to scope out what the opportunities would be either for another meeting, be that formal or informal. But I know that there are issues, and obviously there's an incredible impact, and this isn't a discussion about the viability of the road. This is just about how farmers are being treated,
compensated, and yeah, okay. Patsy,
it's only one wee procedural thing. Some of this stuff was before the courts at the minute, and I'm not sure how much we can get involved whenever there's litigation ongoing.
Yeah, and we can certainly be mindful of that in any conversations that we have. Yeah. And that might be something that we need to be aware of. So, in terms of a committee to protect ourselves, so I think that fine getting a brief and an update on that would be useful.
I suppose it doesn't take away from the fact that the land has now been taken and is being cleared.
Okay.
Chair, notwithstanding the issue raised by Patsy in terms of any legal implications that might be here, can I also make a request that if any considerations are being done, that the people be asked for some written submissions of information? I found it quite difficult. At the last meeting there was no written information whatsoever, no reports, no facts, no tables, no stats. And I think it's not unreasonable to ask representative bodies to provide such information when they're coming to committee, so we have the facts and figures in front of us.
In that case, okay, we will give you some kind of an update on that next week then, just where we've got to with the Clerk for Infrastructure. Okay. Any other items? Okay. Thank you. The meeting is now adjourned.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.